Hello and welcome back to Retro Ranger. You know, the Sega Saturn never lasted very long, especially in the US, where it was actually discontinued after only 3 years since its debut in May of 1995. And yet, somehow within that time period, we got not one, not two, but actually 3 games in the Shining series for that console, including the third installment of its arguably best subset, Shining Force. Now, if you've already watched my channel before, you know I'm a big fan of Shining Force, but what of these other games on the Saturn that share in its legacy? Well, let's find out. Here's each Shining game on the Saturn in release order. Okay, first up is Shining Wisdom. Working Designs makes an appearance on this list, and you all already know my love for this publisher. A Shining game that gets the Working Designs treatment? This should be the ultimate slam dunk. However, I'm sad to admit it just falls a bit short, especially when you compare it to the others in the catalog for Working Designs. It's not a bad game, to be clear, it just pales when it's stacked up against the others. Shining Wisdom is an action RPG where you take control of a young and upcoming soldier named Mars, who is the son of a famed guard, and thus the entire kingdom has high expectations for you. Like most action RPGs, you'll traverse the world in a top-down perspective, and combat happens in real time without any sense of gaining experience points or levels. Combat can be bump style like early Ys games, or you can equip a sword and swing. Bump combat here feels just as unrewarding as it did in Ys, but swinging actual weapons doesn't feel much better either. The hitbox for your sword doesn't always line up with the animation, which just feels a bit awkward, but like most things, you can actually get used to it. Moving around is slow, but thankfully the first skill you learn is one that actually speeds you up. Unfortunately though, it requires you to mash the B button to do so, and that gets old real quick, as you can imagine. Still, you end up doing it anyways all the same because the alternative is crawling around. The graphics are just okay. The character sprites look good, but they also have a very apparent outline that I just don't think complements the overall graphics presentation here. The backgrounds feel like a bit of a step down, and you could actually see similar quality in the Genesis in most cases. There is, however, some interesting use of sprite scaling, and that's worth noting. The story, like most Shining games, isn't going to win any awards for innovation, but they're generally agreeable with me, if nothing else because of its ties to the larger Shining Force world setting and characters. Overall, as a Shining game, it's not bad, especially if you want something more real-time than strategy-focused, but as a Working Designs game, you'll likely need to set your expectations a bit lower. Let's move on though to our next game. Okay, next up on our list is Shining the Holy Ark. We're switching genres again to a more classic RPG setup, complete with turn-based combat and exploration in the first person. Unlike the two-dimensional presentation of the aforementioned classics, Shining the Holy Ark is a well-implemented 3D take on that format. The graphics are very impressive and breaks away from the traditional Saturn feel of polygons that I've noted in the past. You're seeing some smoothing that's a result of my capture setup, but on my CRT, especially with RGB output from the console, this game really pops. Despite the change in genres, this still very much feels like a Shining game in a good way. The story, characters, spells and items, etc. all grounded in the Shining universe, which I really didn't expect. Lord knows we've had our share of Shining games that share in name only already. Thankfully, this isn't one. Anyways, back to the game. Like I said, you'll explore in first person, and explore you will. Dungeons are big mazes with frequent battles, and even exploring towns is done in first person, which is interesting. It works, and towns act as a hub for RPG commerce and saving like in previous Shining games. Between locations, you'll use an overhead map to connect different first-person experiences, and that works fine to break up the gameplay a bit. Combat is engaging and rewarding like in a good RPG. I have to say though that battles occur too often for my taste, and it ends up feeling like a bit of a grind. Overall, I liked this game, certainly better than I expected going in, but all the same, still not my favorite of the three today either. Let's check out the third game in our series. Okay, here's what I'm talking about, Shining Force 3. Let's get the graphics out of the way first. Wow, if I was to try and compare PlayStation against Saturn, this is likely the argument I'd make for Saturn's best. The combination of polygons and sprites is fantastic, and has a bit of the same vibe as Grandia. The dialogue is well done, and it has these animated character portraits which look nice, but where the really impressive stuff is seen is during the battles. And while we're on that subject, battles are turn-based tactical combat as you'd expect from the Shining Force series, and its jump to 3 dimensions works flawlessly well. battle animations are superb for this generation of consoles, and the models are equally impressive. Their shading and other effects that just really make this stand alone in the library. The flow of battle will feel right at home with what you've come to love from the series, and that's a good thing. Your typical goal of killing all enemies or a leader in particular is still here, and the maps really do lean into the strength of the three-dimensional graphics as well. Your usual classes such as healers, mages, centaur knights, archers, and more will make their triumphant return as well. In between battles and story, you'll gain control of the main hero for this scenario and have free range to explore, talk to people, and search for treasure chests as well. Through this, and technically through the battles as well, you'll need to reposition the camera quite a bit to avoid looking at a wall, but thankfully this is appropriately mapped to the Saturn's shoulder buttons on the controller, and it works well, though I do wish it wasn't required quite so much. Story elements have been majorly beefed up, and gone is the super light veneer of a story in favor of long scenes with upgraded dialogue. That story plays out in chapters like you'd again expect from the series, and it focuses around 3 major scenarios which weaves back upon itself in some pretty cool storytelling mechanics. Overall, this is my favorite of the 3 Shining games on the Saturn, and it's one of the most impressive games on the entire console library. Today, a copy will run you about $300 for a complete copy, but as far as Saturn games goes, this is likely one of the best ratios of quality to cost. If you're in a position to swing that kind of cheddar, it would be seriously worth considering. Okay, and there you have it. I have to say, I really enjoy revisiting the Sega Saturn these days. There's just something about this era of early 3D and the console wars that force some innovation and push some boundaries, which I guess of course can be both good and bad. Thankfully, you really can't go wrong with any of the Shining Force games that we got on the Saturn, and each brings something clearly unique to the table. While I prefer the tactical strategy of Shining Force 3 personally, well, you may like the others for their own genre too. Have you played one or maybe all of these before? Which one does it for you? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for coming to Chat Retro Games, and as always, thank you for watching Retro Ranger.